Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello, and today I have Dr. Cindy, the expert's ghostwriter, on the show. Welcome, Dr. Cindy. Super excited to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And a quick bio on Dr. Cindy. Dr. Cindy is a ghostwriter and a book editor for coaches and consultants that go on to achieve bestseller status, book TEDx Talks, build coaching businesses, and create nonprofits. She developed the Write Your Book Blueprint framework to create reading experiences that encourage reviews and turn readers into lifelong fans of the author. Her best clients want to publish books that make an impact, and she's committed to write and edit their books to look and feel like any other bestseller at a major bookstore. Dr. Cindy holds a PhD in English from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette and a master's from the University of South Florida. Dr. Cindy actually just gave the keynote address, Becoming Pop Culture, Write Your Own Story, at the Pop Culture Writing Conference at Western Kentucky University, where she completed her bachelor's. Lots of education. I love this. A great background. She teaches creative writing classes at Writespace Houston, and her poetry collection, Unwinding the Double Helix, has twice been a semi-finalist for the WordWorks Washington Prize. That is a tongue twister. WordWorks Washington Prize. She was featured in the Houston Poetry Fest as a juried reader in 2017 and 2019 and has published over 70 poems and short stories. That is a lot of poems and short stories. She's also a foster mom with Citizens for Animal Protection. That is quite the bio. Congratulations on all the accomplishments and the continued success, Dr. Cindy.
Thank you. Absolutely. I most recently fostered 3 tortoiseshell kittens that were really shy.
Kittens.
Yeah, they're
I'm going to
so
Google
pretty.
that.
Yeah, those are
Tortoiseshells.
the ones. Yeah, they're like splotchy with like caramels and oranges and white. So
Oh,
cute.
that's so cute. I see. Okay, I've seen them before. I volunteer at a shelter called Friends for Life, actually. You may have heard of it.
Oh, yes.
In the Heights area. And I've seen a few just like this. There's a really cute one that has one eye, sadly. I mean, they take in a lot of animals that would otherwise be killed. So that's why I really love to volunteer there, because you're really saving animals that have been saved from kill shelters.
Absolutely, me too. I actually have a one-eyed dog named Duchess Kate, and she's just precious.
Duchess Kate. That's a cute name. Yeah, that's a beautiful tortoiseshell kittens. I never knew the names. And even I have 2 cats at home that I inherited with my girlfriend. And I don't even know the types of cats. I just know that they're really cute and I love them.
That's the important thing.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about a lot of the topics that you cover in your keynotes and when you go speaking around, because I selfishly would like to learn that for myself. So I guess I'd like to start off with maybe a little bit about your story and your background. What did you want to be growing up? Did you always have an idea that you wanted to do something with writing and speaking to others and sharing your message?
Yes. From second grade, when you had to do fill in the blank in spelling, and there would be a word bank with the words you were learning that week, and then you'd have to put them in the sentence. I hated those exercises because I would think of loads of better words I'd like to put in those sentences
Than the ones they limited you to?
of just the ones you were learning to spell that week. So really, you couldn't contain me. Before I was able to read even, I would just like scribble and say that I was writing. So that's really always been there. And then I also did public speaking with 4-H contests, and my chocolate chip cookie demonstration was second in our district when I was in the 5th grade. So
5th grade, okay.
Yeah. But, flash forwarding, my family was always very concerned for me because they didn't know how I would make money as a writer. So they pushed me toward academia because they thought if I had a teaching gig, then I would have, a regular income, and then I could be creative on the side. And they expected it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't amount to very much. So I didn't know any different for a long time. So I finished my PhD in English, and what happened is I was 28 years old when I finished the PhD, and I had just met this guy who was in oil and gas, and Jack got the opportunity to live and work in Malaysia, and he asked me if I would like to come with him. Yeah, I would.
Sounds like a great experience, yeah.
Yeah, that definitely put me on a different trajectory. So we were gone for 7 years, and
Wow.
during that time, yeah, I had a dependent visa. So when I got back to America, I had a 7-year work gap that I had to overcome. And that's something that propelled me into the freelance space where I've
Okay.
done really well.
Where you did really well? I think it cut out there for a second.
Yes, where I'm doing really well.
Awesome, awesome. So you've been in the freelance space for how long now?
3 years.
For 3 years. Exciting. I didn't know whenever you said you were gonna go to Malaysia, I thought it would be, a year or 2. I was very surprised to hear 7 years. How was that experience? I love traveling myself, so I'm just very
Yeah,
curious.
it was amazing. So we started out with a 3-year contract that was extended to 4 years. And then my husband got the opportunity to go to Indonesia. So we also lived there,
Okay.
in Balikpapan. And I'm very careful how I pronounce that because otherwise people think it's Bali. And they were like, wow, did you
Yep.
learn how to surf? And I'm like,
I
no,
just went to Bali this year.
oh, that's amazing. We definitely went there too. We had some amazing trips. So 2 years in Indonesia and then another year in Malaysia. During that time, I was the president of 2 expatriate women's groups. So I spent
Okay.
my time doing fundraising and membership drives and throwing big galas, and also working with the charities to help them use the funds wisely. So the crown achievement there was we built a schoolroom for a school for disabled children in Indonesia, and we purchased sewing machines there so that the mute, deaf, and mildly disabled kids could still learn a trade that they could use to support themselves.
Wow, that's really cool. So you stayed busy and productive and actually had a huge impact on the society out there during your time.
Absolutely.
So that's probably also a really cool thing to talk about on the resume when you came back, because I know you said you had the 7-year gap, but the things that you did in those 7 years there overseas are just so unique compared to what most employers, I would guess, see on our standard resume. Like, okay, worked at this company 2 years, went to this company for 3 years. So
Hmm.
that's really cool. But you found yourself when you came in, it was still kind of a little bit of a gap where you felt like, how am I going to get back into this workspace? And that's how you fell into the freelancing space where you are killing it now, right?
Yes. Well, what happened when I came back and I was applying for jobs, all that work I did was unpaid. So it was
Yeah.
considered volunteer. So they would be like,
Mm.
what was your last um,
Salary.
salary? And it's like, well, as a graduate student,
Yeah.
I got a stipend. I probably comes out to $12 an hour when you look at how many hours I spent grading papers. So not fabulous. But really, the bottom line was I was overeducated with the PhD, but
Mhm.
then under experienced in terms of paid experience that would have been necessary for me to have a position that would have been worthy of my credentials. So it was
Right.
really difficult. I couldn't even get an interview. And then I finally took the education off, and I just had the 7-year work gap, and I was going for like admin assistant, and I couldn't even get anybody to pay me to file papers for them.
Wow.
And so I became a certified personal trainer because I'd also been a marathon runner, and that was something I developed while I was overseas as well. So I ran, I think, 8 half marathons and 2 full marathons, in addition to tons of 5 and 10Ks. So I went into health and fitness at a boutique gym called The Perfect Workout, and very quickly they realized they had more than just a great trainer. My phone conversions were consistently like the very top of the company, and I had really high sales, and my retention was really amazing. So they promoted me to do quality control on the 1-800 number for them with sales scripts and training, and then write technical manuals.
Okay.
So that technical writing was where I got my confidence back that, I am amazing and what I do does have value and people do appreciate it and recognize it. And that gave me the confidence I needed to launch my business when that company got to just their policies and procedures were updated. So they didn't need any more manuals.
Right.
So it was time for me to do something else.
Okay, so that's very interesting to see, and it's something that so many entrepreneurs struggle with as well, is the self-doubt. Can I really handle this next level? I heard, me being in real estate in Houston, I heard a real estate agent at my brokerage office talking about how she still feels that imposter syndrome because she's on track to make like $500,000 this year in commissions.
Mm,
And she's like,
yeah.
I feel like this is, I'm not ready for this, because a few years ago she was in a job that she probably wasn't so happy with, that she thought was all the options that she had based on her experience, and
Yeah.
was paying her X amount per year no matter how well she did, right? So
Mm.
it can be difficult to step into that success.
Yeah. In my third year, I've really blossomed and done a lot of work on myself, done work on my head, as well as done,
Mindset. Yeah.
work on my business. And I'll say, my business coach, Tara Bowman, has helped me a lot with that. And she has this process that she calls cash, clarity, and confidence. So cash is once you get people paying you, you feel more confident. And with that confidence, you have greater clarity. And I've found that to definitely be true for me.
Absolutely. And I always go back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Because when
Yes.
you're in that scarcity mindset and you're not able to pay the
Mhm.
bills, and I had some of this too when I quit I worked in oil and gas, and I quit my job and I had plenty of savings, but then I invested in a couple of different things and didn't quite
Mhm.
start making money as fast as I thought. And I started to get that scarce mindedness where I'm like, okay, I can't even think clearly because I'm so worried about how I'm going to make things happen. And when you start to get the cash in, like you said, you can then focus and take a breath and then focus on the clarity of what do I need to actually do in my business and in my daily routines.
Yeah, it's amazing how all that comes together because once you're making money, then you can stop and say, okay, it's great that I have in the bank what I need. Now, what am I doing that I'm not really happy that I'm doing? And what do I
Right. What can I
do I want to
outsource
stop doing?
or
Yeah. What's
yeah.
the thing I do want to do more of because it gives me the most happiness, and that's a great place to be.
That is a great place to be. So many people they feel trapped, I guess, in their day to day where they are in the cycle of going to work to pay the bills and then they can never break out and do what they actually love. And I heard a funny
Mhm.
thing on an interview the other day that I was watching on YouTube. And it said the funny thing about money is that people who need it most have the hardest time getting it because they kind of repel it with the desperation, right?
Mhm.
But whenever you have the
Yeah.
confidence and you can breathe a little bit, you've got the basics covered,
Mhm.
you can start to really thrive and see the growth in all areas of your life.
I agree. If you're not following Catherine Brown, I encourage you to check her out. She's a
I'm gonna
sales
write it
coach.
down. Catherine
And
Brown.
yes, today she put out a meme that was when I'm in a sales conversation, I blank to stay confident. And I filled in the blank by saying, don't care whether they buy from me or not.
That's
Because I
so
think,
powerful.
yes, when you have that confidence, when you're like, I know the abundance is going to come from somewhere because that's what it does. And it might be from this conversation, and it might be from one that I don't even know I'm going to have in the future. So I don't want to push too hard here because I might push away
Yeah.
even better.
Absolutely. And there's conflicts of teachings out there, especially with sales, of being pushy and follow up. And especially now that I've gotten the route of actually getting my real estate license, the trainings, I just don't agree with a lot of them of, use this
Yeah.
type of language and call them 7 days in a row and until they
Mhm.
tell you to, screw off or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm more of a pull type of person instead of a push. I want people to willingly come to me, and I think
Mhm.
what you and I are doing right here, creating content and sharing our message with people across the world, anybody who's interested in what we have to offer, they'll reach out to us as a result of the value that we're providing on this episode. So that's more of how I like to go about my marketing, I guess, and getting my customers. And like you said, when you're consistently adding value and showing up every day, abundance and opportunities will just come out of the woodwork.
Absolutely. I'm co-writing a book with one of my clients right now that addresses some of the things we're talking about now. So that is really exciting to me. I think we're onto something.
I think so. I think so for sure. So today, I guess we can really dive deep into the value that you're able to provide with booking TEDx talks and all these things that entrepreneurs eventually see for themselves, even if they're deathly afraid of public speaking. All the entrepreneurs that are on my vision board and all the entrepreneurs that we all look up to usually do some public speaking, some writing of some sort. They've got to sell themselves at some point in time. So I guess feel free to lead the conversation however you see fit. What is it that you'd like
Sure.
to start off with the audience? Let's say someone's coming into the entrepreneur space, they have a skill and they're not sure how to market themselves or how to get their message out. What would you advise?
Yes, I had this exact conversation yesterday with the lady that called me. And here's how you can use a book to build your platform and do more speaking engagements. And especially because you're in real estate, you're looking for people locally. It would be awesome for you to build a platform and have a message and maybe even have a spin-off business and something else that might go nationwide or international. But today you want people in Houston in your niche to
Right.
pay attention to you. And she's that niched in as well in Sugarland, with a medical clinic.
Okay.
And what we were talking about is when you have your book, what you're doing is that's like the stamp of authority. So when you looked at my bio, as impressive as it is, and I've ghostwritten and edited, more than 14 books, but I'm not an author yet. Everybody who's an author, when you have that on your byline, like, you just sound like you have more authority. And in the self-publishing space, everybody has the full ability to do so. And when you write a really good book that's well organized and easy to use, people will not be able to stop themselves from reading more of it than they would have if it was bad, reviewing it
Mm-hmm.
positively, sharing it, and wanting to stay in touch with you because they want more from where that came from. And the way
Right.
this benefits you to build your business is, so your book is your lead magnet. And you use your book to get yourself booked as a speaker at local events. So for her audience would be, women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's an alternative to Botox is what
Okay.
she really does in her clinic. So we were talking about when she has her book, she can go to those ladies groups where women exactly like her target audience are hanging out, present herself as an expert and as well as an entrepreneur. So when you have a book, there's a perception of giving value rather than selling, even though, almost every book in the nonfiction space, what is it about? It's about what they do that they make money doing. And
Yeah.
but a book somehow feels, and it's also a low dollar way for somebody to just get to know you, and it's a way that you can reach more people with your intellectual property than you ever could just one-on-one continually. So by going to those speaking events, that's not where it ends, that's where it starts. So you want to use those events to build a huge list. So not everybody is ready to buy now. So when you go to, like, for the medical clinic, she may do a drawing for a free 1 hour thing, to get somebody in the door. But there
Mm-hmm.
may be plenty of people that are still curious and interested. They're not sure yet. They don't know her like that, but they would be willing to stay in touch because they met her. She seemed friendly and engaging. And so that's part of the long game that's so important here too, because we're always looking for the hot sale that's ready now. And
Right.
that is awesome. And we should be always ready to accept that. But also, for the people that aren't sure yet, this gives you a way for them to get to know you. And then with your email list, you stay in touch so that when they are ready to buy now, you're still the only person they think of for what you do.
Yeah, and another huge thing that I've heard with books, for example, behind me, I've got tons of books for those watching this on YouTube. It lives on your shelf forever. So a business card, it ends up in the trash. I actually do a pretty good job of using apps to capture business card information and stay in touch with people that I meet at events. But there's nothing like a book that actually lives on your shelf. I've got a couple back there that I've gotten for free from events, and it's the
Mhm.
best lead magnet ever because I read through the 100 pages or whatever that it might be, and if it's a good book and I like the information, I'm much more motivated to actually invest in a course or go to the next conference that I see and pay 500 or $1,000 or whatever that it might be to get more information in
Absolutely.
person. So for a book, I guess, do you recommend people talk about a certain thing in their industry that's very popular? How do they go about finding topics?
Yes, I have my get my book started package is the way I start with all my clients. And
Okay.
I do something a little bit differently. So normally you would expect me to say, "What do you want to talk about?" Um, and the reason I don't do that is if it was that easy, you probably wouldn't need a ghostwriter. You could just do it and talk about whatever you want. Um,
Right.
but we look at who is your target audience. And the way I think of it is your book is a product, just like any product you would develop for any kind of business. So we have to look at what's the market for this product? What's the pain they feel that makes them want your solution that you're offering?
Mhm.
In this case would be your book. And if you have access, there's no substitute for market research as well, to just go and ask them, in a Facebook group or something, or maybe your own Facebook group if you've been list building and building a Facebook group in addition to an email list, or polling your list, what are the things you would most like to hear about? I'm going to write a book. And you would be so surprised what you'll hear. And what I like to see happen is when there's an aggregate around a particular pain point or something that everybody wants you to talk about, and something that they're thinking about right now, if you had written the book and they would happily buy it and read it. And that's where you want to start, and that's what you want to go in big with, because that's where you're not going to have to fight. A lot of times when people ask me the question, who's going to care? I'm like, if you don't know that, we need to figure that out before you write another work. And that's where it's different, writing for business as opposed to creative writing, because if you're writing a novel, maybe you don't know who's going to care yet, and that's okay. But when you're writing for your business, this is a business expense, and you would want to treat it like, would you be creating a product that you don't know if there's a market for? You'd have a really hard time getting investors, and that makes all the sense in the world. And so for this, you're investing in yourself when you're working on your book. So you want to have a profit plan and know what your end goal is.
And so you're really beginning with the end in mind and figuring out the perfect customer avatar and what they're looking for prior to writing the book.
Yes, we also establish SMART goals for the author. Because what's also important so that the project gets finished in a timely manner is you have to know when you want your book in your hand. You have to envision it, feel it, believe it, and be determined to make it happen. And then also how you will define success so that you know when you reach it. Because otherwise you can do quite well, but just you weren't really sure what you wanted in the first place. So you may feel like you don't know why you even did it. And I would hate for somebody to work with me and then come out that way on the other side.
Yeah, definitely. That's extremely powerful. I've heard on another recent podcast as well, talking about self-publishing, and it's a beauty and a curse in a way, because it's beautiful because anyone can get into it, but it's also a curse because anyone can get into it. So now the market is flooded with a lot of books that never really end up selling like many copies and have bad reviews, or maybe don't provide what was promised upon purchase. And so that's definitely really good advice to begin with the end in mind and even poll the customers. One thing that I found for me, I was having a hard time figuring out what kind of lead magnet to put for my audience, because even now my podcast is general entrepreneur motivation. I have all kinds of business owners at all stages in my audience, and so I'm not really sure, do they just want the motivation? Do they want more of this? So I do need to do some of the polling. But for my lead magnet, I have a free guide on productivity hacks that I recommend. And how I got that idea was that my most downloaded episode is the 5 productivity hacks that I recommend. And so it just kind of, they voted by listening, I guess, and it must have popped up on the most popular episode. And because it has so many downloads, I figure that is something that people are interested in. And it's been my lead magnet now for the last few months.
That is a super idea. That's something I look at too. If I'm taking existing content and creating a book out of it. I have a client who's a college admissions expert on Reddit, and she had this massive collection of replies that she'd made to questions that were asked. And I did with at the time I had an assistant, Susanna, and together we did a collated and then expanded version of that information for her in her book. And one thing we looked at was, which ones got the most traction, because that would indicate that what was there was already more impactful than something else. Although the interesting thing with social media is it could also have been more about the time of day that post went up as opposed to a different one.
That's true. And the algorithms, you're never sure if you use the right hashtag or if you post it in the right area or you tag the right people. There's a lot of variables. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, but I think the key is to stay consistent and to always post no matter what. Some are going to hit, some are going to fall by the wayside, but whoever comes across your content and becomes a super fan or a raving fan like you talked about, they're going to consume all the content with the high engagement and with the low engagement as well.
I completely agree. And then to your point about using your book for a talk, one thing that I would strongly encourage your listeners to do is choose one talk as your signature platform, and you give that talk over and over and over again. And I know there can be some resistance, like, well, what if people have already heard it and then I'm giving it again? But you'll constantly update it and tweak it as you learn more, which I hope we all continue to do, like, in perpetuity. So
Yes.
that's, you're going to update it, but stick to a consistent message, because the more that you give that consistent message over and over, the more you become known for that message. Like, when you think about Donald Miller and Story Brand, you really can't talk about stories having brands without mentioning his name. But there were other people doing not too dissimilar things before, but it was here and there. They called themselves content strategists, or maybe they were copywriters, and he took the thing a lot of people were doing and he branded it and he made it his in a really huge and exciting way.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And one thing going off of what you were just talking about, using the same keynote, all the podcasts and interviews that I listen to, channels on YouTube, I'll see the little cycle go through. And even now as a podcaster, as more and more people are reaching out to me, people will reach out to me when they've got a book promotion, they're going on a tour, trying to get on as many shows as they can and talk about their same message and have the call to action to pre-order the book or to buy the book or whatever it may be. And even
Mhm.
on all these shows that I listen to, they'll have the same guests go through and their story. I still find myself listening to the same guest over and over and over again, even though they tell the same kind of story. Like Jesse Itzler, for example, or Ed Milet have gone around on a couple shows like Impact Theory or the Ed Milet show. I've heard a few, and they'll go
Mhm.
around and tell the same story, but there's a little variation in there, and you kind of want to listen all the way through. At least I do, to catch
Yeah.
those nuances and to learn even more if you can. I had that little issue too when I was doing a little bit of speaking around here in Houston with a real estate team that I worked at. My goal
Mhm.
was to go and pitch real estate agents before I got my license to sell me their off market properties for the investors that I worked with.
Mm.
And I had that complaint with the guy who was kind of coaching me. I was like, well, what if someone's in my class who had me before and they're like, he's saying the exact same jokes and the exact same stuff. And he was
Mhm.
telling me, hey, that's like head trash. Get that out of your mindset. If they heard it before, they can
Mhm.
hear it again and it'll really stick this time. Just focus on giving your best delivery that you can. And that was a little mindset thing that I had to overcome and an objection in my mind of like, well, I don't want to bore people if they've already heard it.
That is so true. Laura Belgray talks about that a lot. And her point is, the people that keep seeking you out and keep listening to you are going to feel like on the inside. They're on the inside. They're the cool kids in the
Yes.
room. When they hear you tell a story they've heard before, they're like, yes, she's
Oh,
going to
I
tell
know
the
this
story.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like that too. When people I follow, they post something and I'm like, yeah, I remember you talked about this in that episode. And then
Mhm.
people who probably just come across their content have no idea and are like, wow, this guy really is a super raving fan.
Yes. Yeah. You start feeling cool, and you only give people the opportunity to know your content like that when you're being consistent with one core message.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as people go and they write their book and they start to book speaking engagements, do you have tips on how they can efficiently book speaking engagements?
You should have a speaker one page written and be ready
Okay.
with your media bio and a headshot. So, really, very similar to preparing for a podcast, like with you, Chris. You need your media bio, your headshot. Your speaker one page should list 2 or 3 of your signature talks. Don't have more than that. It's overwhelming and you seem confusing. In fact, you might be confused. So
Yeah.
just just two or three talks that you give with brief descriptions of them, and again, a short bio about yourself. And if you have them, there should also be brief testimonials from people who've attended your events or heard you speak, that are rave reviews. That is a big help. And then something about what your goals are, as a speaker, because that's how they're going to connect you. They're going to say, yes, that fits perfectly with what our goals are with our event. And we're trying to bring in people like you that have exactly what our attendees are looking for. Then you're helping
Okay.
them solve a problem.
Interesting. And people will pitch me like this as well. I get a lot of podcast booking agencies who are representing different entrepreneurs with different products and books and whatnot. And they'll reach out to me saying, hey, here's the one sheet or the bio for this entrepreneur who did X, Y, and Z. Would you be interested in having him or her on your show? And just like you said, there's a headshot, there's a quick background, there's it's really beautiful when they actually even have a couple sample questions. So I'm like, oh, I can just ask that if I interview them. It makes it a little
Yeah.
easier for me to really just say yes and then ask them a few of those questions, and then ask a few more as the conversation progresses, and it really takes the pressure off of coming up and doing all the research and digging in and figuring out who it is that you're talking to.
Absolutely. And once you've done a few, then you can also reference those talks on your
Yeah,
speaking
it
page as
builds on
well.
itself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got one friend right now. He's got a new software product and he's trying to get it into different dealerships, car dealerships around town. And he
Mm,
just landed one, and so I was like, okay, land another one, and then tell the next one that you just got those two, and now you'll start to see the
yes.
snowball effect versus saying, well, I don't have anyone yet, but I promise
Mhm.
I'll try my best. Right? It's not quite as doesn't hold much
Yeah.
weight.
That's a really interesting thing you brought up because you have to act as if, and
Yes.
yet you also want to be in integrity. So
Right.
you don't want to be talking about all the clients you have when you don't have any and you haven't done that yet. But I'll give the
Yeah.
example of when I first started out with books because I began my business doing copywriting and content writing. And I looked into ghostwriting after I edited a book for a friend and had a really good experience with that. She was really happy, and I thought I'd like to do more like that. But maybe instead of editing, if I could have been there in the beginning, I think I could have helped make the book even better.
Hmm.
And when I announced that I was going to start ghostwriting, I ran a deal just for 1 month only that I would do half price, which I did that mainly out of integrity because I didn't know if I'd be any good at it. Frankly, I hadn't done it before. I
Right.
believed that I would be. I believed I had the skills I had, but that's not the same as knowing it. And that was also a way for the people that took a risk on me when I hadn't done it previously. That was also kind of meeting them halfway on the risk they were taking.
Right.
And two of those books were Amazon bestsellers, and
Wow.
all
That's
that was
awesome.
yeah, and that really launched my business in a huge way. So I think it can be scary to announce that you're doing something that you're going to charge money for and you haven't done it yet. But I think also just owning the value that you already have that gave you the confidence to try it in the first place. And then when you get that question, so let me see a sample of your work, and you can't send them an Amazon link yet because you don't have no one that you've worked on yet. Just being honest and standing in your value, and you will find the people who will take the chance on you.
Yeah,
Just
and I saw the
in your
similar thing when I got my license here in Houston, where people are like, "Well, you don't really have experience yet. So and so has more experience in this stuff." But one guy gave me a chance because he saw how much I was willing to work, and I even negotiated and was like, "Hey, I won't ask for a full commission on this sale, just so I can show that I know what I'm doing and I have the resources to figure out what I don't." And going from there, I'll earn the business long term as this guy plans to do multiple deals. An investor that's looking to flip multiple properties in Houston, and I'll be his main go-to guy for those listings. So just like you said, I kind of doubted myself at first with well, I don't know, I shouldn't charge full price because I don't know what I'm doing, but
Mhm.
that gave me the confidence. And now, we've got an offer that's been accepted on the property. It's set to close and all of that. And as we go further and further down that path, my confidence starts to build. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. I am capable. I deserve to charge more or full price
Yeah.
or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you faced that as you started. You're like, well, what do people charge for this kind of stuff in my market and with my level of experience?
Yeah, and then you've also got to find the people who want what you offer at the price point that you offer it. So,
Right.
anytime you want to raise your price, you also have to do something to elevate your market so that you can tap into those people who would happily pay more because that way you're delivering more value or now that you have more experience.
Hmm.
So I think it's always also about making sure that your branding and your message and everything else is saying who you are and you're showing up that way as you develop, the wide load of case studies and testimonials and all those good things that come with, breaking out from the hustle stage of entrepreneurship to the choosing which projects you work on stage.
Yeah, and actually I talked with another entrepreneur here in Houston. He said the same thing. At first, when you start, you take anybody, whatever price they're willing to pay, you're just excited. And so you get
Hmm.
caught up in the whirlwind of being busy and working and really not knowing if you even made any money and kind of breaking even at the end of the project in terms of your time spent, like you said before,
Hmm. Sure.
maybe ending up with like a $12 an hour or less, depending
Yeah.
on what it is you're working on. You're like, well, was
Hmm.
that even worth it? But as you become more refined and you start to figure out what works, and then you see that you've gone on to create bestsellers and that you do have what it takes, you're able to
Mhm.
charge a little more, attract that higher end client who's easier to work with as well, complains less about the little things, and you
Yeah.
become happier overall doing, I'd say, a little bit less like hours maybe spent per
Mhm.
higher dollar earned, if that makes sense.
Yes. And one thing that's important to me as I go into the fourth year of my business is I want more time to work on my creative writing as well, because that's
Yeah.
something that had been put on hold while I was trying to get my business off the ground and make it profitable and prove to my
Mhm.
husband I could do it, and all those things that happen in year one and then get ironed out as you go. And so now I'm moving into the mode of like, okay, so now I want to create a life and business, not just that runs, but also that I love. And I do love what I do, but yeah, it's also at 10 o'clock at night, I want to be cuddled with my husband instead of like, final proofread on something that needs to go out the next morning. So,
Right, right.
yeah, and that balance is all about being able to charge more, and then you're able to bring more quality to each project than when you don't have so many other things on your plate. And then I think for myself, developing my authority platform as a ghostwriter and a writing expert will give me the leverage that I need to do more things like speaking, um, and the things I need to do so that I'm not spending all my time trading hours for dollars, because I would also like to be working on my poetry and finally finish my novel and those other things that I want to do with my life.
Yeah, I think it was the EMyth, if I remember correctly. I just read it recently for the second time as a refresher.
Mm.
And it talks about how a lot of times people get into entrepreneurship thinking that they're going to have more time for themselves, but then they're being technicians in the business without thinking. They're working in the business instead of on the business, and it can be easy to get lost and you're spending so much time in the business making less
Mhm.
than you were before. Now you're more stressed and you have to figure
Yeah.
all these other things out like marketing and sales and bringing in new customers
Mhm.
and overhead. It can be very crazy. And kind of like you
Mhm.
said, 10 o'clock at night, you might have to do that project that's due tomorrow morning instead of
Mhm.
the beauty of just checking out of a normal job. So I was telling a friend recently too, I was like, man, I kind of do miss when I had that job and I just left and I literally didn't care after 5 o'clock. And now
Yeah.
it's like, well, my mind's kind of always on because it's all dependent on you at that point.
Yeah, and I think it's important as an entrepreneur to not just to do what everybody tells you to do or what a book said, but to do really what you want to do and you will enjoy, because it's not something, I don't think it's something you can clock out of. I think if you're passionate and
Right.
it makes sense and you're going to be wildly successful, it's also going to be you. Like, you are your brand. And when you do that strategically in a way that makes sense, it can also be, I'm always being myself and
Yeah.
always adding value and doing what I love, and it also happens to be a successful business. I mean, I think that's the key to making this work and being comfortable, however that looks to you. I mean, everybody doesn't need, or it's not everybody's goal to, be a multimillionaire and do something that reaches international acclaim. But, whatever it looks like to you when you've arrived, I would think it's, something you're not going to be able to turn off because you love it.
Yeah, I think there was a story I saw on a Facebook status from a few years ago that came up on my memories. And I quoted something from the 4 Hour Work Week, a story about the Mexican fisherman. Have you read the 4 Hour Work Week?
Yes, Jim
And
Ferriss.
I'm gonna butcher it, but I kind of remember more or less because I just saw it a few days ago. And it was talking about the Mexican fisherman. He was doing really well, catching a lot of fish, and there was some businessman or something who's like, "You should do this and buy a bigger boat and have more catch more fish, and then you could start a company and make a bunch of money, and then eventually you can retire and live on the beach and hang out with your kids and take siestas." And he's like, but I already do that. So he already was in that happiness and living that lifestyle without
Mm,
having the millions of dollars in the business that the businessman was saying he should go do. So I thought that was really
wow.
powerful.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah, but like you said, you don't, maybe not everyone's goal is to be a multimillionaire. Maybe it's just that time freedom to spend more time with your kids, or be able to go to the park on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. when everyone's stuck at a corporate
Yeah,
meeting, right?
exactly. That's what I noticed when I went to Western Kentucky University and gave my presentation. And I also visited a few classes that had English majors in them.
Hmm.
And one point I brought up was, it's Friday morning. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm here with you in Kentucky
Yes.
instead of
Instead of at some
classes.
job that
Yeah.
yeah, because that was always my biggest complaint, was the limited vacation time. And even when I would go travel, when I went to Bali earlier this year, I was
Hmm.
telling some people before we did some hike up a mountain. We were going up Mount Batur, a volcano, where you go at 2 a.m. and then you get to the base of the mountain at like 3 and you start hiking so you can catch the sunrise.
Oh, wow.
And we met some Europeans, and they were like, "What? You guys only get 10 days of vacation a year? Like, how do you do anything?" I'm like, "Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's why I'm not." My girlfriend still works in the corporate lifestyle right now, but
Hmm.
I have the flexibility and freedom that they were preferring over the money, right? Because they were like, "Well, I can be here for 3 weeks. I'm in Bali for a whole month." And we're like, well,
Yeah.
we're here. We got to get back in. We don't have time for jet lag. We got to get right into it because our vacation isn't that long due to my girlfriend's limited vacation time.
That's right. I love to travel too, and I've built that into my business as well.
Hmm.
I I challenged myself, and I did it this year, to go to 12 networking events that required me to get on an airplane.
That's awesome. What a great
And
goal.
yes, that it helped me grow a much wider audience and really diversify where my referrals come from. And it goes even further to do something I've always wanted to do, where my business wouldn't be so dependent on where I am locally.
Hmm.
So
Like location
still,
independent.
yeah, so still quite a few of my clients are here in Houston, but plenty of them are not. I even have one in Australia,
Wow.
and yes,
That's
one in
awesome.
Chicago. Yeah, so I'm all over the place, and that has worked really well for me. But the cool thing is, wherever I have my laptop can technically be my office. So during a lot of that travel, I would be editing a book while I'm on a plane. I would do a 2 hour author interview with a client in between going to presentations at a conference. And I was really able to keep my business going and meet my deadlines even while I was going out, trying to do marketing and also just trying to improve myself and learn more. So I don't know how you could do that with a 9 to 5.
Yeah, you really can. And that's so powerful what you just touched on there, where you can get so much done digitally. These days, you can just work from home from anywhere. And if you can build your business in a way that supports the lifestyle that you want to live, you can have that laptop lifestyle, the digital nomad lifestyle that people they crave so much, but they're not sure how to get to. And you can, like you
Mhm.
said, you go to conferences. I think that's an awesome goal, to try to go to 12 new places and get on a plane, because it forces you to meet people in other markets and other cities in various conditions, I guess, weather wise. And you get
Yeah,
to, how do you, I guess, Australia, what's the time difference? Like, is that a pretty difficult call to manage when you do a video call?
it is. So if I'm not mistaken, because Australia is a huge country with several different time zones, but for this client in particular, when it's 7 p.m. for me, it's 8 a.m. for her.
Okay, so someone is
So
gonna have to wake up or sacrifice something.
yes, so I have, that's why I have one time each week available from 7 to 9,
Okay.
because that's fair. And I have done 8 to 10, but honestly, I mean, after 9, like, I start getting tired, and I
Oh
want to give,
yeah.
people are, they're paying good money. I want them to get the best of me, and
Yep.
they're just not going to get it after 9. So, the places where I draw the boundaries are just, if I know I'm not going to be able to show up powerfully and deliver value, I'm not going to offer it, because it's not going to be good for either of us, really.
Yeah, and that's another nugget you mentioned. I know there are the night owls and there are the early risers, but as you go through the day, as we all go through the day, our energy levels, it's like a battery, like a phone battery, right? As you get to
Hmm.
the end of the day, if you haven't plugged in your phone at all and you've used it a lot, you've talked to people, you've
Yeah.
done video calls, you've watched videos
Mhm.
on YouTube, that battery is going to be low. And if you try to do anything with it, I notice my phone when it's on like 12% and I'm trying to watch a video or do something, it
Oh,
starts to
yeah.
freeze up and have issues and tell me that my battery is low and all these messages come up. So that's a
Mm.
huge nugget just as human beings that we need to be aware of, is that we show up better earlier in the day and then things start to go downhill. Typically it's hard to keep that energy up when you're, going on through the day. So
Yes, I love that you said that because you also made me think about the importance of self-care as an entrepreneur.
so important and so overlooked.
Yes, I was recently at a mastermind with Selena Sue and Laura Belgray in New York, and there was another girl there who does kind of content writing, and she was asking me how I take care of myself. And I was explaining that, in my opinion, what people are paying me for is also to get a good night's sleep, to be well hydrated, to be properly nourished so that I'm not sluggish in the middle of the day.
I love that.
It's really all part of the package because the more efficiently my brain works, and that's connected to your whole body, the better the work I do is going to be. And so when you're just neglecting yourself just to churn and burn, you're actually not doing what you were hired to do, which
Yeah.
is because you're not going to be able to do your best quality work. I know that college students would disagree and say that their most brilliant ideas happen at
All-nighters. Yeah.
5 a.m., with a can of Red Bull beside you, but
Not me.
degrees.
Yeah, I always tell the example. One time in college, I had a final at 8 a.m. and another one right after, and I studied
Mm,
till 3 a.m. for both of them, and
wow.
I did terribly on both of them. They were my strongest classes. I think one was statistics and one was like business finance. But
Hmm.
I remember specifically, I never pulled an all-nighter before, and I tried it for the first time, had tons of caffeine, and it was not good. I was just frustrated and nervous and jittery in both of those tests, felt terrible. And yeah, I'm just so happy
Yeah.
to not have to be doing the tests or anything anymore. But like you said, it's just, I love the way you reframed it, where you said they are paying you to take care of yourself and to bring your best to every appointment, to every conference. And that's true. If we're not bringing our best, we're doing a disservice to our clients.
I couldn't agree more. It was really a great a great conversation that we had there, and it's led me to think that I'm going to start talking more about what I do for self-care, particularly in writing and
Hmm.
protecting my creativity, because I think that's also something of value, that I hadn't really. I just take it for granted that I do it, and that's where the personal training background helps me in spades as well.
Yeah. What do you have any tips on the creativity? I've recently done more walks outside without technology. I'll literally just walk out and go for a 5-minute walk and just think and listen to
Hmm.
the birds and things that I usually don't pay attention to. Try to practice more gratitude, and I just breathe deeply, and I'm trying to work on being more creative. Do you have any tips or things like that that you do for yourself right now to stay creative?
Yeah, well, one thing that's really out of the box that you may not think of is napping.
Really?
So, yes, if I don't have a nap somewhere between 3 and 5, I can just tell that I'm fighting against myself. So, this is like a 15-minute power nap. This is not,
Okay.
you
2 hour.
out for 3 hours. Yeah. But, the quick power nap gives your brain time, like when you're halfway through the day or so, it gives your brain time to go to your subconscious and process everything that you've already brought in so far that day, and
That's
then
so
helps you kind
cool.
of push reset so you can go back into the next half of the day, almost like you just got up in the morning where you're resetting your brain.
A friend recently told me that I guess Kobe, the basketball player, apparently takes several naps throughout the day. I didn't know. I don't know how much he sleeps at night or how that looks, but I've always been of the mindset of like, well, if I have a nap, I'm not going to be able to fall asleep on time, and a 15-minute nap makes sense versus like you said, the 2 hour nap. Then I definitely wouldn't be able to fall asleep at night. But I'm gonna
Yes.
have to try that out. That's incredible. I'm always looking for new ways to hack and get my subconscious thinking
Hmm.
more creatively.
Absolutely. I love that. And then another thing is micro breaks. So
Okay.
if if what you're doing happens to be like me, and so you spend a lot of time at a computer working, if you do that for 3 hours and you stand
Mhm.
up and you're stiff, and that's no good. And also, like, you quit being able to concentrate. And so at
Right.
each hour, if you just take a 60-second break. So for me, I just get up, it's easy because the dog might want to go out, or I'll just find one of my cats, and if they'll let me pick them up, depending on the cat, depending on the day.
Yep, I got one that doesn't like me to pick her up. She's like,
Yeah, or just like walk around my house and find a piece of art and just stop and look at it. Just 60 seconds. This is short. But that also just allows your brain to reset. So then when you go back and sit down, you're more refreshed
That's
and
awesome.
help you actually extend the amount of time that you can do work. And it's going to have you feeling better while you do it.
And you said you do that every hour?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's great to set timers on your phone too, or at least remind yourself. Because if you're in that state of flow, which is good, it means you love what you're working on. You might look up and you're like, "Oh, it's been 3 hours and I haven't eaten or had any water or anything," and that's not good.
Absolutely. And that comes from the first book that I edited, which is called Crush Stress While You Work. If anybody wants to purchase it, it's still available on Amazon. My
Crush
clients
stress
always
while
make me smarter. Yes.
Yes, no, and that's the beauty of even these kind of conversations is look, now I learned that taking a 15-minute nap in the middle of the day will help me kind of restart my brain to solve some of the problems that I faced maybe in the first half of the day. And
Hmm.
you always learn something new, and maybe I could teach something new, and when I teach it, I learn it twice. So there's a lot of power in the collaboration of going to events or doing podcasts or just having conversations with new people in different industries. So
Absolutely.
we covered so much awesome stuff. I know I want to be respectful of your time, and we talked about. I also want to make sure that the audience gets to understand the power of writing a book, having a platform, booking speaking engagements. Did you have any other final tips on once someone is to get a book done and then start to book speaking engagements and have their keynote? What should be the next step? Obviously, growing their list. Should they have kind of a course that you recommend or coaching, or is this for any type of service or product that you recommend?
Um,
I know you asked a lot there. Feel
I'm
free
like,
to answer however you like.
yeah, sure, that's okay. I'm like, yes, and all of
Yes
it.
and yes.
um, So I mentioned Selena Sue. Her course, Impacting Millions, gives you tons of help with your PR. So when you're at a point and you want really higher level speaking engagements, maybe you feel like you're ready to be a keynote speaker, you'd like to be a contributing writer to magazines and online zines that would be interested in your topic. That's another way to widen your reach. When you have a book, it's easier to do that. And when you go through Selena Sue's system, she shows you all kinds of hacks to do that at all different levels. So no matter where you are, you can go up. And I feel like I should also throw out, if you're going to do Selena Sue's Impacting Millions, which launches every March, I would encourage you to get on Laura Belgray's email list because she has the best affiliate program for you to go through that course.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that information. And I guess if you don't mind, maybe afterwards, if you can send me a couple of the links for those resources that we talked about, I'll go ahead and put them in the show notes so it's a little easier for the audience to find. And since we covered so much today, I typically like to wrap it up and say, do you have one main key takeaway that's actionable for someone who wanted to take action today? What would be one main key takeaway that you recommend?
Yes, I would say start with a plan. If you want to write a book, think about who do you want to write it to? What's the problem they have that your book is going to help them solve? And what do you want them to do after reading the book, which is going to be defined as taking action with you to stay in touch with you? Where do they find you? And then build that platform so when they get there, it feels like the party's already started and they're really glad they're in.
That is a beautiful way of putting it. And I've started to realize that in so many books, right? Everyone has their message, they have their audience to find, and then they have their call to action and a community usually that you can like, oh, there's so many people who've been in here forever and I'm just now late to the party. I wish I heard about it years
Yeah.
before, right?
So true. And you can start by populating that with your biggest supporters. So
Okay.
maybe other friends that are also in your industry, clients that you've already served, just hustle to get people in, and then you start refining with your target market. But yeah, definitely don't just build it, there's nobody there, and then start inviting like who you think your best avatars are. Do
Yeah.
a little bit of that grunt work.
That's probably more of another no too that I see, where sometimes people just add everyone to their group and it's like, why did you add me to
Hmm.
this group? Even worse is an email list. It happens a lot in real estate. You sign into
Hmm.
an event and then all of a sudden you're getting emails from someone you've never met selling something. I'm like, this is probably not going to work very well or have a very good conversion, because I'm just kind of annoyed that I got 10 emails from you today that I on a list that I never signed up for, versus
Yes.
willingly raising my hand and saying, I love your message and I want to hear more of it. Two very different things.
Absolutely. And, you should never sign people up for your email list who didn't expressly say they would, because when they unsubscribe, in a lot of cases, they can choose why. And if the reason they select is, I didn't sign up because they didn't, that can
Hmm.
negatively affect your ability to show up in people's inboxes instead of getting filtered as spam. So, if for no other reason, don't do it for that reason.
Yeah, very good advice, because your deliverability will be affected negatively for sure.
Hmm.
Well, Dr. Cindy, this has been amazing. I really appreciate your time. I want to go ahead and give you the opportunity to share where our audience can find you, follow you, reach out to you for help. Where can our audience go?
Yes, I encourage everybody to take advantage of my lead magnet, which is your 20-second power sentence. I've created a template that is fail proof so that you can have your one sentence that says who you are, what you do, and who you do it for, to make sure you show up powerfully and to make people ask questions that you can answer instead of just throwing the kitchen sink when people ask what you do. Or what's your book about? You can use the lead magnet for either one. You can find it on my website, www.cindychildress.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Cindy Childress PhD.
Okay, awesome. And again, I'll go ahead and link all of that in the show notes. I'm definitely going to get that lead magnet, because it seems super powerful to have all of that information, and even like an elevator pitch type thing, right? Sometimes you ask people what they
Mhm.
do, and 5 minutes later, you're not really sure, and maybe they're even a little bit confused. So
Mhm.
really dialing that in and knowing what value that you're able to add and having that in a way that others understand is super important.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again so much for being here. I really appreciate your message, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch. And since we are here in the same city, maybe I'll go to an event or something that you're hosting, or we can grab
Yeah.
coffee or something.
I
And
look forward to that. It was great to meet you. Thank you.
yeah, so great connecting. And if you ever have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out, and vice versa. I'll definitely reach out to you as well.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Bye, everybody. Take care. Thanks for listening.